you need to have a doing in the spirit before you have a knowing. In other words, you need to contact that higher self to say, why I'm a human being, not a human doing. In other words, you need to be where you're supposed to be. You need to be in a position where you're supposed to be. And then the things just unfold. Something we have to do, and the most powerful thing we have is, I call it forgive. The word forgive. Human beings are a polydimensional, being that far transcends what people usually think of as human. Yeah. Just to give you kind of go back up in terms of little physics, our plane of existence, the energetic plane, has 5 dimensions, not 4. Okay?
Yep.
Then the spiritual plane has 7 dimensions. Some people call it astral. And then there's the 13th, which is the eternal. Okay? And everything are harmonics of that. That's why the very nature of existence itself is literally the passage of spirit through energetic planes. It creates a montage.
We'll buy all of that. And what we are here, what I see in my field of vision, is a tiny tip of a huge iceberg.
Basically 2 perspectives in the universe. And this is whether you're human or non-human. What we are, or any other, quote, sentient being in the universe, is a spirit being that's transcending to an energy matrix, creating a reality. Okay? In other words, we're co-creators of our own timeline and future.
Absolutely.
And if you look at people like Michio Kaku, advanced physicists and so on, they talk about the universe in terms of energy, like a zero energy culture and their level 1 energy culture, a culture that is able to leap across the galaxy and is bound by time-space. But you can also use those similar principles for, similar kinds of characteristics for dealing with what I call the spirituality of a sentient civilization, right? So you need to use both the energy thing, and they are tied together.
Yep.
Because there's a lot of suppression of the technology that we already have, because spiritually we're very, what I call a zero-order culture.
Yep.
We're still in the playpen or the crib of civilization, and we've been actually quarantined for 3 shars, which is Sakurai Sitchin's passages through the galactic plane of fire, it's called. The 2 perspectives tie in with either being in touch with that higher self, which is the I am, the one that says, let there be light, the spirit that's in us. And has been in all great spiritual leaders that spoke truths that they knew in their heart, whether it was Buddha or Zoroaster or whatever. All these great leaders have spoken something, and many times it's been converted or perverted or twisted, or they themselves didn't have the whole truth, they just had portions of it. So then it became a religion. Now religion is a substitute for relationship.
Yep.
And I call it real lies going on. And it doesn't matter if you're talking about Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, Zoroastrianism, atheism, all the isms in the world fall into 2 categories. Either you're here, the voice of the spirit that created you and created all that exists, the continuum, because without a single voice, there is no universe. One I voice, I call it. There is no one I voice. So therefore, it's either your will, the will of, in other words, deciding for yourself what is good or evil, or hearing the voice. In other words, you don't need to tell people what's right or wrong. If they're in contact with a higher self and with the creator that created them, they know what's right or wrong.
Okay. Now, just bring that back to where you were when you were talking about the wildcard factors of who people really are. This is my paraphrase of what you were saying,
right.
and how there are certain things that can't be programmed into their supercomputer, because actually you're talking about aspects of human beings that are eternal and magical.
Exactly, right. And that, you see, that point ties in with the. You can go to all kinds of different religious books, whether it's the Hopi Indians or the Christian Bible or many other books, and they'll tell you that there's been visitations to Earth over all of the ages.
Okay, now...
And the way it ties into this is that some of these visitors have specific characteristics that are very common. For example, the Naga in the area of the Oceania, right? Which are, the serpent people, or the feathered serpent god, or whatever. And what you'll find, or the Dagon, which are the amphibian beings that come from a world, and therefore even the hat, for example, that's on the Pope is actually is called the sign of Dagon, right? Which is the fish god, or Onanes.
And I'm really interested in what you're saying. So what can I do? How can I be? What action can I take to capitalize on my wild card? They may not be able to predict what I'm going to do next.
Well, what I'm trying to do is get at, I hear lots of different reports that people say, I've been in touch with the Pleiadians or the Andromedans, or I've been in touch with this group or that group. The people need to use extreme discernment.
Yep.
And the way I think about it is this. I say, if you went to a new city, let's say you were from South Africa, and you came to New York City, and you didn't know where to go, but you went to the wrong part of the city, you might not come back out alive.
Right.
Okay? And the similar thing, you have to think of the universe that way too. There's very good places in the universe and very bad.
Yeah.
Okay? And just think of it this way. Any being that's capable of leaping across space-time and arriving in our world, you have to assume that their intelligence is limitlessly greater than ours, and therefore anything that they communicate to us could either be very true or very, very maliciously manipulated to control us.
Exactly.
Almost like a pet. In other words,
exactly.
we would be treated like an ant or a cockroach or like my pet dogs. They would have no way of even understanding what we're talking about, so it would be almost sport.
Yes.
Two perspectives out there. You've got one group, or you might call them the serpents, like it talks about in the Bible, okay? And in fact, you got to understand that you're looking, when you look at the Bible, at things that are a description to people that were shepherds and artisans 2,000 to 3,000 years ago, right? Or you look at other ancient books, and what they're really trying to describe to you is something that's actually quite similar to what's happening today. So let's say we have one group that says, we are a predatory super nation of super scientists that don't have any spirit, but we invade and take over worlds. We can invade the mind space dimension. We can attack on the physical level. We can put policies in place to cut off their connection between their physical body and their spiritual body. Through the things like fluoridation and genetically modified food, electromagnetic. What people need to understand is that there's a vast universe out there. If you just listen to a lot of the scientists, and everybody that's probably listening to this will understand, if you just, they're looking for bacteria on Mars, and they're looking for other evidence that there's even simple life form on Titan and other planets, and planetoids and so on. The fact is, if you just take the minimal number of factors, there's 100 billion stars just in this galaxy, and there's 100 billion galaxies, and that's in the so-called known cosmos, in this known cosmos, which in a sense is probably an elemental particle in a yet larger universe. Yeah. Now a lot of time people have to use these kind of things, and now the biggest problem I am worried about is that when there's a lack of discernment, there gets to be a mixed message, and so many messages have a lot of noise in them that people won't get a clear understanding of either the opportunities or the dangers of what's going on. What people have to understand is that human beings are a supernatural, transdimensional being that is made in the image of the creator of the universe. But not only that, we're like cells in a body, and we're connected, almost like neurons, so that if we get to a level of revelation, it's not just for our own purpose, greedily, it's to serve the entire body of mankind. And the best way to think of mankind is not just, in this plane of time-space, but mankind is a non-local being that stretches across the cosmos and into the past, present, and future. Okay? So when you start to grasp that and you have that intuitive, that's why I tell people when I try to do talks, I say, there's two groups of quote religions on earth. There's those that believe in the reincarnation and those that don't believe in reincarnation. Right? And the reason is they're both right and wrong.
Okay.
And the reason is, for them, that's their level of understanding, because that's where they're at. When you become truly intuitive at the highest levels, there's no such thing as reincarnation. If you actually felt the pain of allowing your government to attack and blow up little girls in Baghdad, you wouldn't do it, because it would be like a neuron connected to another being. Or you wouldn't walk by a plant starving for water without watering it. You wouldn't spread depleted uranium on the crops because you could feel that. In other words,
you wouldn't do these things because you're doing it to yourself.
Right. It's another expression of the I am. Yeah, well, it's allowed to get so far for a couple of reasons. The most important thing in the universe for sentient beings is to have free choice. In other words, to choose to remember. A lot of people think that you're going through life to learn things or to prove a point or to reach so many, like a point system, like a grade, and that if you reach a certain grade, you can transcend, which is totally garbage. It's like my little daughter with Down syndrome. She doesn't have to earn points to be my daughter.
Sure.
Okay?
Yeah.
You are a son or daughter of the Most High God. And what's happening is your birthright's being stolen away from you, just like the story of Jacob and Esau. It's being stolen away from people, and the problem is it's being stolen away primarily to tell them things that they are not. they're being told that they should decide what is good or evil rather than deciding from the spirit by making that connection. Because the only way for people to connect and not have an external matrix is to have the spirit inside them.
Absolutely.
Now the problem I see is this, is that people have to discern there's two groups in the universe. There is, if you want to call it the dark empire, we will call them the trans-dimensional beings. We might call them the lords of darkness and their princes. And there's many different civilizations that are in this. Whether they're, we don't even need to get into names, but there's a whole series of them.
Yep.
You might call them the serpentines, the reptilians, the tall grays, whatever you want to call them. Okay, there's a whole array of these. And on the other side, there is a grand council of civilizations out there that are very, very caring, and they are connected to the spirit of the Creator God. They are advanced beings, both human, humanoid, and non-human, across the cosmos and the universe. In a sense, you're in a sense of what I call spirit sleep. Your spirit's asleep so that it can then start to reawaken its connectedness with everyone else. Because the problem is we have a sea of facts, but it doesn't change people. For example, when you look at the anomalies around 9/11, how many people have insisted that there's a proper investigation? Right?
Absolutely.
Right, and there's not. I mean, you've just followed the financial side and whatever, all the other anomalies, and we still have all these factions, even in the so-called 9/11 movement. Well, it's the same way with religion. I call it real lies going on. They have their dogma they cling to because it's what we call their hell insurance, because they're fearful of knowing these things out here, of hell or separation or whatever it is at the end of their physical life. So they kind of stuff themselves with. And we were brought before the council because they're making a decision, either thumbs up or thumbs down for our civilization. And we're at the knife's edge of a bad decision. Mankind, as a corporate being, has to make decisions to get on the right timeline. And if they don't make the right decisions, we're going to get on the wrong one, and we're going to become a dead cinder. In a sense, this planet, and if you want to think of the Earth as a living being, it's like a giant womb of these spirit beings called human beings on Earth, or mankind, that are about to be birthed to become, I call, Homo luminous or Homo galacticus or Homo, an advanced mankind that can interact with advanced civilizations across the cosmos, that doesn't have to have a matrix of billions of laws, that doesn't have to have a chip in us to track us to make sure we're good, and do all these things. Because what we're at this nexus or crossroads where we either are going to have the law is Yeshua HaMashiach, which means the Father in the flesh, okay? And we are the Father in the flesh. So are you. It's as we wake people up, they then manifest what's always been there. Okay. And mankind as a corporate being must get this message. And if they don't get the message correctly, which transcends religion, politics, national borders, or their version of a new world order or world government, because they get a world government that's absolutely noxious. It's not, see, a world government can be a world government with national boundaries and nations. It can be with peoples that keep their recipe cards and control of their civilization. It can be with a world that has some degree of order without knocking all boundaries down and creating regional trade zones, because the world is not based on economy. It's based on, if you want to call it, identity. Okay, and what they're doing is they're homogenizing the identity so they can control the population and turn people into cybernetic robots. And they're literally moving us step by grade into a matrix. Now, the future that they're talking about is where citizens can even have the option of having a brain interface chip and be loaded into a rack. And they won't even have to exist in the physical world. Their bodies would be put in life extension technology and loaded in a rack for centuries or thousands of years. That's where we're headed. People say, oh no, that won't happen. I said, well, I'm sorry, but that hellish world is right around the corner. But it's dependent on humankind.